So, now that the patch is only a few days away, I figured this would be a good opportunity to talk about some game design and mechanics. Specifically, we're going to be talking about the hatchling epidemic, or the general problem with the hatchlings. Now, don't get me wrong, I do hatchet run all the time, and for quest items in a couple of my guides, I've even recommended to people that if they're struggling to just run to that location with a hatchet. And for the hardcore challenge, I wasn't able to buy anything, so the first couple raids or the first couple days, I was doing a lot of hatchet runs. So I'm not trying to call out players who do hatchet runs currently or find it fun. There is a lot of people though that will call you out and hate on it and call players who do hatchet runs a cancer to the game. So let's be honest, don't hate the player, hate the game. Doing hatchet runs is a very strategic and successful way of playing the game for acquiring quest items, keys, and collecting treasure loot like in safes on maps like Customs and Shoreline. No matter where your personal opinion lies on hatchet runs, either you're for it, against it, indifferent. I'm indifferent on it personally. I have a good time with it, but I understand the consequences. It is unintentional. The developers did not anticipate hatchet runs being a thing. They expected everybody to come into the game with some supplies to help them survive and, go throughout their match, killing scavengers, looting for their quest items and their keys, and going to the extraction. Now, for a lot of players, that is currently how the game is played, but it's kind of almost impossible to go into a Customs or Shoreline raid without seeing at least one hatchling running to the dorms to get the factory key. Again, not hating the player, because I recommend people do that if they want their factory key. The most efficient way in the current game is getting there first with a hatchet and dragging the factory key into their container. It is just the way the game is designed right now. So I've been discussing this for probably for as long as I've been streaming Tarkov, and all other broadcasters as well. You constantly get discussions on possible solutions to the hatchling problem. And I think we have two ideas that actually could work and help the hatchling situation and encourage people to bring in gear. One of them is my own, and the other one was suggested by a viewer, and I thought it was a solid idea. I don't think it's unique. I think I've read this in the forums too, but I'll include it at the end. It's not the primary discussion point of this video. But my idea is health insurance. Now, surgery, which is a price that will be paid whenever your character is critically wounded or killed, is already confirmed in the game. But I want to take that a step further and call it health insurance for the sake of this video. Before the raid begins, you are shown the normal insurance screen where you're able to insure all of your normal gear with the traders. After that screen, a new health insurance screen would prompt up. If you go in with nothing but a melee weapon, this includes items that you secure in your container, you will have to pay the maximum price on health insurance whenever you die. The total price that you have to pay could be tied directly to your PMC's total level. For example, a level 1 player would have to pay a total of 1,000 rubles if they die with just a hatchet, and a level 50 player would have to pay 50,000 rubles if they die with just a hatchet. They could even make the max health insurance equal your dog tag's value, just to make it simple. I just want to be clear here that the numbers are not really important, they're just for an example. The idea is your health insurance payment will lower depending on the gear that you bring into the game. So your helmet, armor, primary weapon, pistol, and sufficient medication. To keep the system simple, they could just make it a checkbox that doesn't really care what armor, helmet, rifle, or medication that you have on you. All that matters is that you have something. So a helmet could give a 10% reduction, armor 15%, a primary weapon 10%, a pistol 5%, and sufficient medication 5%. And I think for medication, you would have to have at least 4 basic medical items, like a bandage, AI2, splint, or painkiller, or a single IFAK, CAR, or Solowa. How much medication a player needs to bring in to receive the reduction would be up to developers. Now, of course, it would be like a minimum of such items. So it wouldn't be like for each bandage you get 1% and then some dude fills up like an entire backpack full of bandages. No, it wouldn't work that way. Now, they could make the system more advanced where different helmets and armor could provide additional health insurance reduction based on the armor's class system. Primary weapons, pistols, and medication should probably be the same across the board to prevent people from exploiting the system. Health insurance could also be affected by the player's reputation with different traders. Peacekeeper could cost players USD instead of rubles, and different reputation levels could offer different benefits and reductions. So let's use an example. A level 25 PMC wants to join a game. Without any gear, they would have to pay 25,000 rubles when they die. To reduce their health insurance cost, this player decides to bring in a coal pack, a vest, P226 pistol, 2 bandages, 1 AI2, and 1 painkiller. Their 25,000 ruble cost is now reduced to 16,250 rubles. That's a 35% reduction. To reduce their health insurance cost even more, they decide to bring in a primary weapon, and now they only have to pay 13,750. And for the sake of an example, let's say this player has level 2 therapist, which provides an additional 10% reduction on health insurance payments, bringing the cost down to 11,000 rubles. Now these are just made up numbers. If you guys think the price is too high, like the developers could bring that number closer to 0 if somebody brings in a lot of gear, because the idea is you're actually risking gear, which is value, it's money. And for people who still want to do hatchet runs for fun, I mean, they're still going to be able to do that, but at least if they die, they have to pay a bit of a premium, whereas regular players are risking their gear. And what's great if they tie the insurance payment to PMC level, it's not really going to hurt new players that much because their health insurance premiums are going to be so low anyway that they can use very little gear or just a hatchet to learn the map. And 1,000 rubles won't really be much of a hit to a new player stash because you get about 300,000 rubles at start anyway. That means a level 1 player could die 300 times with a hatchet before they actually lose anything important. Or let's say that experienced players want to smurf their accounts. Well, sure, they could just hatchet run all the time and then basically just disconnect it before extracting from the raid, but they're never going to be able to level up their traders. So I would love to see that if surgery could work in a similar way to this, that would be great. But what do you guys think of the health insurance system? Let me know in the comment section below. Now, another really basic and simple idea comes from another viewer. I wish I had his name, but this is not the first time I've heard this. And this idea comes from changing the way secured containers work. Basically, you can take items out of your secured container in the middle of a raid, but you cannot put items in. It's pretty savage and would change the game drastically, especially for people who farm the Bitcoin rooms on Shoreline and keys. So if you run to the 3-story dorm as a hatchling and you find the factory key, guess what? It's got to go into your pocket until you extract that raid. That means that players that kill other PMCs have the opportunity to collect rare keys whenever they net a kill. And it's also going to force players who want to go and find keys, it's going to increase that intensity of leaving that raid and extracting. Once you've extracted, of course you can put that key into your secured container, but not before. It also means that you're going to get less people that are constantly running to certain locations like the marked room, for example, to get their hands on a key bar or a documents holder. Because guess what? You're going to have to leave that raid with the key bar or docs to actually get your chance to throw it into your secured container. There is a lot of potential implications that this system would have, and I'm indifferent on it because I don't really necessarily want to make the game harder, because once I find my factory key, I want to keep that thing safe. The developers could also limit the types of items that can be exchanged in the container during a raid. They could be like, hey, only keys can be put into a container during a raid. Everything else can only be taken out or has to be placed in during the stash screen. That way, yeah, players that are farming keys for like quests and stuff, you're not hurt too badly, but people that are just rushing these certain treasure rooms, farming bitcoins, gold chains, and these rare items, they basically have to actually defend themselves and think strategically about going into a building and extracting from the raid rather than just filling up their container. So why would this help with the hatchling situation? Well, people aren't really upset at hatchlings because they're killing other PMCs with their hatchet. I think it's universally accepted that if somebody kicks your ass and you have a gun and they have a hatchet, you just suck. They win, they outplayed you. The idea here is mostly everybody does hatchet runs to farm rooms with keys that are in their container. For example, the 310 room on Shoreline that is full of treasure. You go there, you get a bunch of rollers, some bitcoins, and some gold chains. You get killed by a scavenger, no big deal, you just made 200,000-300,000 rubles. You don't even need a system like health insurance in the game to have this negatively affect hatchlings' ability to collect supplies. or the overall effectiveness of taking no loot into a raid. But it will make this game a lot more difficult for everybody, including myself, and possibly increase the amount of people that are camping the extractions, which is something we just don't need right now. So I just want to reiterate that these are just ideas. The developers may never introduce either of these changes to the game. This video is to just inspire discussion amongst the community on a issue that has been constantly debated since the game has been out of NDA, essentially, or even before that, since the game has existed. And with both of these ideas, it doesn't eliminate the ability to hatch it. If you are a player, for whatever reason, that only likes to use a melee weapon, that playstyle will still be available for you. You're just not going to be able to make a lot of money, or your survival rating is going to be significantly lower than it is currently. And the benefits of taking in gear will actually begin to outweigh taking in nothing at all, especially for farming keys and making money. If you guys are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe for more Escape from Tarkov and other survival shooters, and check out the daily live streams every single morning starting at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.